Hey, it's your guy Tyrrell back with the interviews. PSG, Lille, two top sides in Ligue 1 with PSG extending their lead in Ligue 1. How did they do it? Where did Lille go wrong? Don't worry, here at the interviews, we've got you covered. So on this edition of the interviews, we're going to break down how PSG beat Lille. So before we get into today's video, don't forget to give our video a thumbs up if you do enjoy it. The bell below does give you daily notifications regarding our organic, unfiltered soccer/footy analysis. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. In today's video, we're going to break down the game into two halves. The first half and seeing how Lille tried to cope with PSG, and then get into the second half and see how PSG were able to push ahead and win the game. But first, let's get to the starting lineups. We have Lille more of a 4-2-3-1. Liao ahead of Ikone out in wide areas. They went with Pep and they went with Bamba, and in midfield they went with Mendes and Xhaka. Then we get to PSG, more of a 3-4-3. Di Maria, Neymar, and Mbappe up front. Out in wider areas, Meunier and Bernat, and in midfield, Verratti and Draxler. So first, let's get into the first half, see how Lille try to approach the game and where PSG found their strengths. When you think about first against second in most domestic leagues, you expect some sort of a challenge. Lille didn't really present that here. You didn't really know how they were going to score goals. They dropped off into two banks of four without the ball. Even if they try to push up and press, PSG had the 3v2 advantage. So the wider center backs and Marquinhos and Carrera were able to push forward and try to play passes into the midfield. What the Liao and Ikone tried to do is sit on Draxler, sit on Verratti, ensure that they couldn't really play passes through midfield, dictate the tempo of the game. So that was their role. Outer in the wider areas, you think about them, they were dropping off into more of a 4-4-2, and basically they were really doing a good job of compressing the space in midfield, but with the wider players and Meunier and in Bernat pushing very high up the pitch, and the central players in Di Maria and Neymar tucking into those pockets between the center back and the full backs. Now you had the wider players in Bamba and Pep pushed out a bit wider, and that was how they got pegged back into their half. Sometimes it looked more of a back six, and that was a big problem for Lille going forward. And then you have the fact that they have a very strong attacking lineup in Mbappe, in Neymar, trying to find those pockets of space between the lines. Even when Bernat tried to push forward and Meunier, and you think that you could find an advantage out in the wider areas, you have the two center backs, and you had Draxler who came in and made some vital interventions down that left side to ensure that they were unable to break into space behind Bernat. Buffon was barely tested in that first half, and PSG had the better chances, although they weren't really getting them at ease. You think about a lot of their chances, a lot of it came through in those central areas where they tried to really try to play those tight, intricate passes, and that was where PSG were looking to get forward in that sense. But a lot of it came through reverse passes. When we think about some of the chances they did have, three come to mind where you really see what PSG were trying to do. The first one stems from a simple throw-in, and again, you have Neymar, you have Mbappe throw the ball into Neymar. Neymar sends it back to him. What you have here now is you have Mendes shift over. With Mendes shifting over to try and protect, the ball goes back to Mbappe. Bernat makes the overlap, and then Mbappe just plays a quick pass into Neymar, who pokes it in behind Mendes, and Mbappe runs between both of them and curls his effort wide of the net. Big warning sign for Lille, because that's what PSG try to do. They try to get Neymar and Mbappe to combine in tight spaces to offer a threat, and that was a big warning sign for them. We look to another opportunity here where we get Mendes back into his shape, and it's Di Maria this time shifting the ball out to Neymar, and when he shifts the ball out to Neymar, Neymar now is in a 1v2 with Selic and with Font, and what happens here is that he runs at them and he's able to play a reverse ball into the path of Di Maria, who ends up, he cuts in, makes the reverse ball into Di Maria, who runs off Mendes, and he only pokes his effort inches wide of the net. But again, it's a reverse ball. It's where Neymar was trying to pick up the ball in ahead of those two players, and this time Di Maria was able to get across, but he wasn't able to convert his chance. The final opportunity that really comes to mind was the counter attack, and it stemmed from Mbappe drifting out to the right hand side. Mbappe is able to then deal with Toure and Xhaka. He's able to skip past both, then cut in on Mendes. And as you have Toure recovering with his marker, with the center back, what happens here is that Mbappe plays a reverse ball into that path for Meunier, but Meunier skies his effort over the net. Another great chance. It stems from a reverse ball. It involves Mbappe and Neymar, but that is what PSG were trying to do. If Mbappe moved out into wider areas, you'd see there's one time he moved out to the wide left, and you'd see Bernat pushing into that central role. Neymar was trying to pick up the ball in those pockets of space ahead of Shelik, ahead of Font, and we'll get to that more in the second half because that's when it became more prominent. But that's where we saw PSG really harm this Lille side, whereas Lille didn't really have a counter-attacking threat. There were a few long balls over the top where they kind of forced the center backs into some issues, but for the most part, that was where PSG were getting forward, pushing out the wider players deeper with the wing backs, having Verratti and Draxler essentially a push forward and caused the center forwards a lot of work to do in those areas. And then again, Mbappe and Neymar finding, and Di Maria finding space in between those lines to offer a threat. And PSG were knocking out the door, but in the second half, they really came to life. So let's get to that and see how they were able to push and overcome Lille. The second half saw more of a PSG onslaught. They were creating more chances. Lille were dropping off deeper, and PSG were finding space in between the midfield banks, and that was key. Neymar in particular finding it in between Mendes and Pep. We see in the opening stages where you have the pass from Draxler to him. He's able to turn, run at goal, and the only thing stopping him from breaking into the box was that Xhaka came across and was able to intervene. You think about another opportunity where it's Draxler again clipping out a long diagonal into that channel. What we see here is that the ball is eventually picked up and it's dropped off to Di Maria. Di Maria clips the cross into Mbappe first time, and when Mbappe picks it up, he is now tasked with Shelik. Unfortunately, he's unable to get that first touch well, and we see Bernat make the overlap. And with Bernat making the overlap, you have Neymar that moves central, running towards goal, but there you have Soumaré come across and make a vital interception. So that was key. You think about another opportunity, we'll get Bernat back into their position. Think about another opportunity again, where this time you have Verratti pushing forward, and Verratti is able to find the pass between Xhaka and Bamba for Di Maria, who instantly backheels it into Mbappe, and he breaks that goal. But again, Soumaré comes across, makes the vital block, and in those 5 minutes, 3 chances where Lille were pushed to the limits, and we didn't see that on a consistent basis in the first half. Here in the second half, now we get to a better chance. We have Draxler again involved, playing that diagonal ball out into Di Maria. Di Maria drops it back to Neymar, who is now ahead of Xhaka. What happens here is Neymar's ahead of Xhaka. You have Di Maria with Bamba, who was recovering into that space, and he plays it back to Di Maria, with now Mendes shifting across as Neymar drags out Xhaka. What happens here is that Meunier makes the overlapping run. You have the pass in between, Meunier in half space, breaking towards the box, trying to play it to Mbappe when he should fire a shot on goal. He plays the cross through the 6-yard box and nothing comes from it. All of that in the first 5 to 7 minutes. You see them make a change with Rui Font coming up front, but that doesn't change anything. Eventually, PSG get their opening goal, and it stems from constant pressure on Verratti and his ability to get away from it. The first time you see Mendes step to him and he's able to push by him with ease. What happens now is that creates space in midfield for Neymar to step in, and what happens there is that now Verratti is able to play the pass between Xhaka and Pep for Neymar, and as soon as Neymar gets it, you have Font there, you have Mbappe running off Font between the two center backs, and all he has to do is play the pass across Font. Mbappe runs across, catches the keeper somewhat off his line, and he curls a superb effort into the top corner. You can't make those mistakes against top opposition. That was there. They stepped, they pinched, and PSG were able to play them off. Eventually, Lille brought on Soumaré, they brought on Araujo. What happens here is that the second goal kind of stems from the same element, and what happens is that what you have is Verratti again there. This time you have Soumaré stepping to him, able to break that challenge. And what happens there is that he finds Neymar, and when he finds Neymar up to the right of Mendes, he plays it to him. And when Neymar gets the ball, Mendes now retreats. But what happens here is that Neymar could play the ball across Mendes, and Mbappe plays it back to him. He runs that goal, and he has his deflected shot off Sumaru beat the keeper, and PSG are up 2-0. Yes, they did give away a goal from a spot kick due to unfortunate handball, but this was a complete, well, not a complete, but a control performance for PSG. They were never really in trouble. Buffon was never really forced into any major saves, and Lille didn't have a counter-attacking threat, as PSG were able to easily win back the ball and were comfortable in 1v1 situations when balls were punted out into the channels. And this goes to show why PSG are possibly favored to win League because even when they faced the team closest to them, no real challenge, no Cavani, no Rabiot, they were able to get the job done, stemmed from the brilliance of Mbappe and Neymar. But in the second half, we saw Verratti and Draxler gain control of the game, spaces opened up, and PSG were able to execute. But let me know what you guys think. Can any team provide a challenge to PSG after this win? Did Lille have the best shot, and where do they go from here now? Can they finish in the top 4? Will it be downhill? Meet me in the comments below. Don't forget I upload videos every day, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. And don't forget, if you did enjoy this video, give it a thumbs up. And that was your daily dose of the interviews.